Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and it is, of course, June of 2017. The year is half gone. And, well, this has been a pretty bloody good year so far, I should say. World War II month was an amazing success, with Call of Duty World at War being the most popular by far, which I absolutely support because it's one of those Call of Duty games that has kind of fallen between the cracks in many respects, and it is an amazing game in its own right. This month, of course, is going to be Dark Shooter Month Part 2, and we're going to be taking a look at Quake 4 and Prey. And if there is time, Brutal Wolfenstein. Hey, that kind of rhymes. Now, if only I could get a dime. But that being said, Brutal Wolfenstein is a WOD that was recommended to me by a number of fans, and I finally got around to playing it, and it is excellent. The gameplay is very different from Brutal Doom because you're facing enemies with hit scan weapons, so it makes the gameplay considerably different, and I absolutely love it. I love the weapons, I love the enemies, I love the reworked Wolfenstein 3D levels. Just an amazing WOD all around. For the Let's Play channel this month, we're going to be taking a look at Medal of Honor Airborne. I'm going to be finishing that game. And Brutal Wolfenstein. We're going to be finishing the very first episode of Wolfenstein 3D. I'd love to do more, but I want to move on to other games. Because I've gone and I've played all the episodes in Brutal Wolfenstein. It drew me in that bloody much. And I'd love to finish the entire game, but we're just going to take a look at the first one because I want to move on to Turok 2008 in July. Why? Because I want to do a sci-fi first-person shooter, and Turok 2008 is perfect for a Let's Play. One of the big problems with Turok the Dinosaur Hunter and Turok 2 is you need to pay attention to where you're going, and it can be really difficult to find some of those keys at times. I already did 2 Let's Play episodes of Turok the Dinosaur Hunter with the original PC version from back in the day. I took both of those down years ago just because they were kind of boring, because it was basically just me looking around for a key. Really, that's one of the problems with Turok, the Dinosaur Hunter, and Turok 2 in terms of making a Let's Play, is there can indeed be a lot of dead space because you're paying attention to where these keys are. And I think in like the second episode, I've missed one of the keys, just I was clueless and walked right past it. That's one of the problems with Let's Plays, because you're trying to think of things to say and commenting on the game all the while trying to play the game. It requires a lot of multitasking that for a more complex game like Turok would make it a very difficult prospect to actually play and finish. And also Turok is a long bloody game too, whereas Turok 2008 really isn't, although Turok 2008 is not short, especially by today's standards. I was thinking about doing Darkest of Days, but I'm still getting the black screen graphics failure. I have no idea how to fix that. I've gotten that on every ATI card except for one I had in 2008. That card ran it perfectly fine, and that's how I was able to play it, but on my 7770, didn't run. On the RX 480, doesn't run, so I'm kind of screwed on that one. If those of you who follow the Let's Play channel, I will mention in the last episode of Return to Castle Wolfenstein that we're going to move on to Wolfenstein New Order. That game doesn't fucking work. I don't know why. It worked on the 7770, but it doesn't work on this one. As for the tech problems I mentioned in the previous episode, many of them have been ironed out now. I finally got Crimson Relive to work. I got it to work like just a few days after the vlog from last month, but it works now, and it works pretty bloody well. I'm still getting some freezing issues here and there, but they're not as bad as they were. I'm not sure what that is. I'm thinking it might be a bad SATA controller, but I'm not sure. Ultimately, I'm just going to live with it, as it doesn't really crop up that much anymore, especially not, it's nowhere near as bad as it once was. So, in terms of the Let's Play channel, you won't even really see any freezes in those pretty much anymore at all, which is very, very good. It's been a very difficult thing to get working. Let's see, so future reviews, I mentioned this in the vlog last month, but I'll reiterate it here. We're going to take a look at Half-Life 2, Half-Life Opposing Force, Half-Life Blue Shift, and Half-Life 2 Episode 1, all in July. In August, I'm not entirely sure what the reviews are going to be. Some people have suggested I should look at Stalker, that's what it is. Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. I have that game. I bought it back when it came out, but I never finished it. I didn't find that many game-breaking bugs in it when I finished it. I just kind of got tired of it after a while. It's a very difficult game, to be certain. And I just kind of got turned off by the extreme difficulty, and I couldn't really get into the game's overall atmosphere and story. I was looking for more of a sci-fi styled RPG and it just didn't really do it for me. I might give it a second chance. I'm not sure if I'll review that in August or not because RPGs are very difficult to do. But on that same subject though, there's some games I would like to review, but that means I'd have to play them. I actually bought not too long ago Salt and Sanctuary. Did a Steam refund on that one, and I'll tell you why. I didn't like one of the core gameplay mechanics. With Dark Souls, you can have a shield up and attack, and it's a very smooth thing to do. With Salt and Sanctuary, the main attack button is changed to a parry changed to parry, and I don't like it. I just couldn't get used to it. Steam refunded it. It pissed me off. There's another game I picked up called The Surge, sci-fi version of Dark Souls, where you got a mech and you got different mech bits. I did not Steam refund that though, even if I didn't really like it. I might do a live stream of that game. I'm not sure, but I don't like it as much as Dark Souls. Really, only From Software can really get Dark Souls right, in my opinion, so far. The Surge comes close, but Dark Souls is great because of how the gameplay is handled. Everything just works very smoothly in Dark Souls. And if you change one element of it, like with changing the main attack to parry when you have the shield up, it just kind of, for me anyway, ruins the flow. And the Surge kind of does this. You don't have a roll in the Surge, but you do have a hop back, and I'm finding it very difficult to get used to that. But I'm not saying the Surge is a bad game by any means. I'm just not really enjoying it as much as I do Dark Souls. It's one of those things where like I'll play the Surge for a little while, like an hour, and then I'll go to like Dark Souls 3, and I'm like, oh, I'm enjoying Dark Souls 3 way more. So yeah, I don't know. I might review the Surge. I definitely am thinking about live streaming that this month, assuming I have the time. I'd like to do some more live streams. I'd like to do another fan appreciation live stream, not of GTA 5, but instead of Alien Swarm, because that got a new release a few months back. Or maybe not even a few months back. I think like a month ago, it got a new release, Alien Swarm Reactive Drop. That's the whole reason I got Steam in the first place, because this is something a lot of people forget, actually. Steam, at one time, was viewed by some members of the PC gaming community with a lot of skepticism. It's like the idea of you don't really truly own your own games, that it's all on this Steam server somewhere. Obviously, the games that you have are, of course, on your hard drive, but the fact is you have to have Steam enabled to play these games, and at one time, people didn't like that. I didn't. I didn't get Steam until 2010, and the only reason I got Steam then was so I could play Alien Swarm, and I had to get a game to play Alien Swarm. It's free, but you have to already have a game. And the first game I ever got for Steam was, of course, Aliens vs. Predator Classic 2000. And that's the only way you can really play that game. You can't really play the original disc version on a modern PC, as far as I know. I never could get it to work in any event. But yeah, Steam, the idea of Steam was something that not a lot of people liked, because back in the day, when you had a game, you had the physical copy. The disc actually had the game on it. You popped it in the DVD drive. You or it would autoplay. You'd hit install. You'd type in a CD key, and yeah, that was it. Now you had to go through Steam. If something ever happened to your Steam account, you lose all those games. Or one thing I didn't know, but I've actually talked to some of my international fans, and they actually mentioned that if you go from one country to another, you can't use the Steam games. So that is kind of shitty. So yeah, Steam, I was very skeptical of it at first. Now I have pretty much all my... Well, you can't get any... You can't get modern releases anywhere but Steam. So, of course, I kind of had to do that. I still really don't like Steam in some respects, but I use it anyway. It's just, these days, you don't really own your games, which is really annoying, but, well, what can you do? Get the console version? Yeah, right. Console peasants! But, in any event, moving right along... One of the things that is fairly interesting now, this has nothing to do with Steam, but it does have to do with the passage of time, is there's actually some videos being put on YouTube chronicling the history of YouTube reviewing, which is rather interesting. Talking about the Irate Gamer. I don't even know if he does videos anymore. The Irate Gamer used to be extraordinarily popular. He was sort of the... I've been watching a lot of British podcasts recently, so essentially he's sort of like the Poundland version of the AVGN. I actually didn't think his work was that bad, to be perfectly honest. It was highly derivative, hence why Poundland, Like, you've got, the AVGN, he's like Coke. Well, maybe not Coke. Pepsi, there we go. He's like Pepsi. And You know, the irate gamers like Mr. Soda. That's the thing. And you know, and there's also a lot of videos chronicling the rise and fall of Spoonie. And Spoonie is a very tragic case, in my opinion. I know a lot of his stuff is self-inflicted, but still, he was like, for me at least, and I think for a lot of people, he was like the internet reviewer. I mean, like the AVGN, yeah, he's okay, but you know, mainly he's just sitting there ranting about an NES game. What Spoonie did is he'd talk about PC games. He'd talk about FMV games. He'd get very into the nitty gritty details of a lot of these things, and that's why he was so popular. And it is very sad to see what he's become today. I don't think he even does anything anymore. Because I actually check his YouTube channel now and again. Like the last thing he did was Dark Souls 2. So I imagine he's gone forever, which is very sad. Whatever's happened to him in his personal life, it's very bad for him, but also very bad for his fans as well. That sounds really shitty. Ultimately, it's very bad nonetheless that he let whatever inner demons he has just completely conquer him as they have. But there's also some other videos chronicling sort of the rise and not so fall, but more like the petering out of that guy with the glasses, also known as Channel Awesome. I used to be a big fan of those guys way back in the day. It's sad to think that that's way back in the day now, but it really is almost a decade. Chronicling, how they really were, once again, a very big part of the early YouTube scene. Well, they were like the midpoint of YouTube. Like the early YouTube scene was like AVGN, Spoonie, and a few others. That guy with the glasses was sort of like the midpoint, I think. Ultimately, though, they've kind of risen and fallen in some respect. They haven't really fallen, though. Like I said, they just kind of petered out. At one time, they were extraordinarily popular, but some rather questionable decisions, I think, caused a lot of problems on their end. I think one of the big things that ended up happening is ego took over. If you look at the Brawl, and you'll see this in a lot of these Chronicle videos. The Brawl, for example, they did back in, I think that was 2010, or it could have been 2009, I can't remember. That thing was really good, because that was them coming together. It was just a bunch of it was just a bunch of people, a bunch of nerds coming together and making this video. After that, like with Kick-Assy and stuff like that, it was a bunch of people who, they thought they were on the top of the world, and they kind of lost their nerd roots. I've actually thought about this myself. Like, what if, whenever I get super popular, whenever that may be, what would I do about a GeneralLotz movie, Because, like, well, can you do better? And I think I could, just because I can divorce myself from the GeneralLotz persona, but then I never really created a persona. What you see on camera is me. I am just naturally like this. So, for me, if I was to create a GeneralLotz movie, I wouldn't have the GeneralLotz character be a character. I would just have me as GeneralLotz in the movie. So it'd be like, I'd be this YouTuber, and then something would happen to me in the movie, but it wouldn't be happening to the YouTube character, essentially. And I've thought of some plots that could work. Like a survival horror kind of plot. Like, there's some kind of crazy Cthulhu cult that's trying to attack somewhere, and I just happen to be there. And I'd probably survive that a little bit better than some of the That Guy with Glasses people, since, I know how to use firearms and have a little bit of survival training and stuff like that. And I've actually been out in the woods and know how to, work out there. And I think that'd make for a fairly interesting movie. You could do that on the cheap, too. It's about kind of, what you can do, what I think would actually be pretty interesting, is you could actually sort of be inspired by, which is a fancy way of saying rip off You're Next in some respects. For those who haven't seen it, You're Next is an absolutely excellent independent horror film that basically has this woman with survival training fighting against these trained killers that come and attack her and her family, her in-laws, at this isolated country house. And it's a really, really good movie. I would never have seen it under normal circumstances, but I was convinced to go see it, and I was impressed. This woman actually kicked a lot of ass in that movie. You can find it on Netflix. You can find it just about anywhere. It's very much worth watching. But the big problem, I think, with a lot of these internet reviewer movies is I think ego really does take over. Ego and hubris are two things you really have to watch. I have to watch that myself a lot. And that's an egotistical thing to say, isn't it? But that's something that can really take over. You can see this happen in a lot of major productions as well, where ego becomes more important than the actual movie or production itself. You got to have somebody that can tell you no. or just can look straight in your eye and say, that's a stupid idea. Because we've seen that, we saw it with Star Wars, Episode 1, The Gungas. There's actually enough salvageable stuff in Episode 1 that movie is bad, but had they just cut out a few elements, it could have been halfway decent. But oh well, you get the idea, ladies and gentlemen. You got the Gungas. You gotta try to constantly fight against those Gungas, ladies and gentlemen. You gotta do it. Otherwise, yeah. Yeah. That's one thing about George Lucas, though, is he really does need somebody out there to focus him in on ideas that aren't really stupid. I mean, just compare Episode 4, and there's a comic out. Episode 4 and the Star Wars. The Star Wars isn't bad, but it's much more Flash Gordon than Episode 4 is. Episode 4 was sort of a new style of sci-fi storytelling in many respects. It was groundbreaking. It really was. Sci-fi hadn't been done like that before in many respects. It didn't really feel like 70s sci-fi. The Star Wars felt very much like 70s sci-fi. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I am GeneralLotz. The channel is going to keep going forward because I still have a great deal of passion for what I'm doing. That's one of the other problems with some of these YouTubers, is they lose passion, you know. They lose that spark that made them get into this in the first place. And thankfully, thanks to you guys, the fans, with all your support, I haven't lost that spark. I lost it for a little while a number of years ago, but I was able to get it back, and I don't see it going anytime soon, if at all. No, I don't see it going anytime soon at all. There we go. We gotta be positive. So I'm GeneralLotz, wishing you good passion, good pride, whatever makes you happy.